We decided to get intimate, so we've got the armchairs. There we go, into the armchairs. Hello, everyone. Welcome along to this session. Thank you for coming along. We have a great session for you today. My name is Nick Goodman. I'm a UK radio consultant with a special interest in morning shows, or breakfast shows as we call them back in the UK. I've presented them, I've produced them, I've launched them, I've worked closely with them, I've probably fired a few in my time. They are still the most difficult thing in the world to get right. And today we're going to talk about one of the best breakfast shows in the world right now. And we've got one of the architects of that show here with us today. So Helen Thomas started her radio career in news and worked at BBC Radio 5 Live, Radio 4's Today programme, and BBC Radio 1's Newsbeat. She joined Radio 2 in 2003, has been working with Chris Evans for, what, 10 years?
Coming up for, yeah.
10 years, picking up many awards in the process, and having launched the show at Radio 2, and it's been executive producer. She's now editor at the station, overseeing large chunks of the output. We're very, very delighted to have her here today. So please welcome Helen Thomas. So Helen, before we get going, I want to share a few facts and figures about Radio 2. Is that all right with you?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so let's do a description of what Radio 2 is. So BBC Radio 2 broadcasts a unique mix of music and speech programs covering a diverse mix of live pop and rock, comedy, documentaries, and religious output, as well as running social action campaigns. This is quite a broad radio station, right?
Certainly is, yeah.
Let's do the facts and figures. 15.2 million listeners a week.
Yep.
It's the UK's largest radio station, right?
It is.
29% reach for all you stats fans. 29% reach, 17.8% share. Very good. 11.9 average hours per week. So this is a station that targets older listeners, and they spend more time listening to this radio station. 11.9 is really good average hours per week. And the listener average age is 52. So in the UK, as well as across Europe, we have an aging population, so this radio station is right where the population is. And to make big radio stations, you need a big budget as well. £47.8 million content budget a year. So, you know, pretty good. A few murmurs around the hall. Tell us about the show then. For people who haven't heard the show, describe the show to us, Helen.
Okay, so if I was to describe the Chris Evans Breakfast Show to people who've never heard it before, I would say it is that instant shot of energy that you need to get yourself started in the morning.
Chris describes himself as the nation's alarm clock, I think he described himself as. Let's have a listen to that instant shot of energy then. I thought, well, the best way to do that is maybe get a couple of top of hours from last week, the week before last. So let's have a listen to 90 seconds from, I think, 7 and 8 o'clock, the top of hours.
BBC News, it's 7:05.
Thank you, Moira.
Online, on digital radio, and on 88 to 91 FM. BBC Radio 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your radio talking, and we want to wish you all a very happy Friday morning. Good morning, 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 morning.
This is your wake-up call.
Good morning, friends. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to the show. We have Friday, March the 6th, 2015. Already special because representing Salisbury, Joanne Blakeman is taking a trip down memory lane when she heads to a school reunion. 20 ladies.
Top temperatures ranging from 10 to 12 Celsius. BBC News, it's 8:05.
Thank you, Moira.
Online, on digital radio, and on 88 to 91 FM. BBC Radio 2.
Here we go. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Good morning, friends. Welcome to March Week 2, 2015.
How do you like your eggs in the morning?
I like mine with a kiss.
And you know it's Monday when you hear this tune.
Happy Monday, everyone.
have a great week.
Ella è mia manina.
So typically understated.
Yeah, it's good,
you know?
right? This is not a person who wakes up with the audience. He's already awake when he goes on the air. And out of the 8 o'clock news with the Bees, which is an interesting choice. We'll talk about music a little bit later. He's always like that, right? He's always energetic. I'm taking it. He doesn't just come in and need his coffee, and but he bursts in the studio, right?
He absolutely does. Yeah, he does. I think he saves his quiet time for when he's at home. But once he's in the studio and the red light is on, it's showtime.
We thought it'd be interesting to hear from the man himself. Now, he can't be here today, but we asked him to record a special video for us, answering our top 10 questions about the show. He likes lists, we like lists, we're all in radio, we'd do a top 10, right? So here are the top 10 questions that we thought maybe you'd want to ask as well, and we posed them to Chris.
Hello, Radio Days Europe in Milan. I'm so sorry I can't be with you today. I'd love to be with you today. To be honest, I wasn't asked. Anyhow, maybe next time. But I am ready for my top 10 questions, so fire away. The 3 words I think describe our breakfast show on BBC Radio 2 best would be passionate, energetic, and warm. We are positive every day, and I also think we never take ourselves too seriously. We know our place, we know our listeners, or we think we know our listeners, and we try to know them more and more each day. And you know, they listen to us, but we do listen to them as well. Nowadays, especially, it's very important to get lots of listener interaction. I don't think it's necessarily important to get a lot of callers on the air, but it's important to get a sense that a lot of people are listening and engaging in our conversation. Playing plenty of music is hugely important. They do say that music is what feelings sound like, and I love that, you know, and I think that, you know, as flowers need the sunshine and the rain, I think human beings need music. We do have a lot of guests on our show every day and every week, because what we did when we set off doing the show 5 years ago, the breakfast show, is, you know, we had this rule where we weren't going to have any famous people on for a good while, and we were going to talk to people who weren't famous but were passionate, because passionate beats everything hands down all the time. Now, if you have certain ingredients and certain specific criteria for whether a person should be on your show or not, then obviously the more of those you get right, the better the whole package is. You know, and if you can get somebody who's famous and well known and liked and passionate and relevant, then that's fine. But actually, the celebrity aspect of it, the fame aspect of it, is the least important for our program. I think the characteristics of a great producer is very simply to weigh up who they're working with and what they're working on, and then figure out what that situation needs, as opposed to what they want to bring to that situation. We are a team show, you know. I'm the motor mouth, but the team are unbelievable. I think it's very similar to a kitchen in a restaurant. You know, there's the producer at the pass, you know, and then there's all the sous chefs, and they're throwing dishes his way or ingredients his way or her way, and then he gets them ready, and you know what he thinks or she thinks is right comes through to me, you know, in a gorgeous, neat ball of something to do with on the radio. And it's massively important. The best piece of advice I've ever been given, I think, is just keep going. You know, whether it's trying to get a job or trying to get through a show, just keep going, because those boxes will get ticked, you know. And that's a great feeling. Just keep ticking the boxes, you know, one foot in front of the other, you know, just keep moving forward. That's it. That's what I would say. Just keep going. I've been asked to recall what the best feature I've ever done or been involved with on the radio is. I can't remember anything, to be honest. I don't really want to. You know, I delete whatever little is in here at the end of every show, so we're ready for another one. You know, I need blank canvases. You know, galleries are for other people to look around. You know, not for me to record. So I don't know, and I actually don't care. What's the most important thing is what's the next best thing we're going to do. My one golden rule for me as a presenter: never take this for granted. Never take this for granted. You know, the fact that I have been allowed access to a BBC microphone is a really big deal, you know, and I cannot forget that. I should never, ever forget that. And if I take that for granted, you know, it's time to leave.
The Chris Evans Breakfast Show.
Chris Evans, everyone. Give him a round of applause for doing that for us. A lot of the show comes from Chris's own personality. When the show started, what was the mission then, Helen? When you sat down with him, what did you say? What are we going to do with this show then?
Well, a lot of that is what he talks about there, about, you know, never taking the microphone for granted, recognising that it's an enormous privilege for people to invite you into their homes on such a kind of intimate level first thing in the morning, and to remain positive. Always to remain positive, you know? People's lives are hard enough. So actually, you know, it's important to keep reinforcing the good things about life rather than banging on about the negative.
I wrote down a phrase which I was trying to work out how I would describe the show. And I wrote down, an oasis of happiness in a deeply dark and depressing world. I don't know if that says more about me than anything else. But when we live in a world which is full of war and people getting their heads chopped off and all this kind of horrible stuff that's going on, is it important that you can just escape from that? Is it a deliberate escape?
I think so, yeah. I mean, obviously we report on the news and that is confined within our bulletins, but we don't choose to dwell on it. We choose to dwell on stuff such as, you know, the latest fad diet or whatever, you know, something that will make you smile, something that will be useful, something that will make you feel connected so that when you go into work or on the school run or wherever in the supermarket later that day, you feel like you've got something to talk about, you feel like you're informed.
And going back to that positivity, is that genuine? Can you always be happy on the air? Or when you're not feeling great, you've got to kind of up the game a little bit, haven't you?
Well, he is an incredibly positive person. And I myself am an incredibly positive person.
You are indeed.
So I mean, I think, you know, there have been several sessions here that have talked about being authentic. And I would absolutely wholeheartedly endorse that. But I do think that, you know, we don't work in a bank, you know. We go to work in a radio station and we get to play great music and, you know, we get listeners texting, emailing, tweeting us with just amazing content showing how engaged and into what we're doing that they are. And that just seems, how can you be depressed?
Best job in the world, as I say. Best job in the world. Let's talk about the team on air then, because there's a lot about team shows and the different characters and how they interact with each other, and we all know that's really, really important. So just talk us briefly through the on-air cast of characters here and what they're kind of, to use a radioism, their role definition is.
Okay, well, Moira Stewart is our newsreader. She is a British news icon, if you like. She was the first black female newsreader on British television in the 80s. And she's always been perceived as this incredibly serious character. And by doing the Chris Evans Breakfast Show, she's actually sort of revealed another side to her personality. So when she reads the news, she's got that absolutely serious voice, authoritative voice. You believe everything she tells you, which you should. But then when we play around and do different stuff with her, you see a completely different side to her.
Yeah, so it was a smart move getting her because you had credibility because everyone knew her from the TV news, but you also took over from a show which had a much older demo perhaps, and she appeals to the older end as well, so it was quite a smart move to bring her in.
Well, absolutely. I mean, when we started, we did get negativity when we took over from the legend that is Sir Terry Wogan. You would expect that, you know. Listeners don't always respond well to change immediately. However, even the people that were saying, "What the hell is this?" were saying, "But we're really glad Moira Stewart is there." So
tell us about Lynn. What's her character on air?
So Lynn Bowles is kind of, I guess you could call her the bossy older sister.
The bossy older sister,
yes.
Okay.
So she does the travel news on the show, but she is very sharp, she's very funny, she's very quick-witted. So quite often when Chris is going off on one of his flights of fancy, she'll cut him down to size.
Vassos Alexander. That's a Greek name, right?
Yes.
Now,
Vassos.
he's a smart chap, isn't he?
Vassos is incredibly intelligent. He speaks like 5 or 6 languages.
Which is, by the way, I know you all do, but in England to speak 5 or 6 languages is quite rare, I can assure you.
Yeah, he is. He's super bright, and he does the sport on the show. So as well as being super bright, he's also kind of very warm. He's got 3 young kids. He's just recently had another baby. So he's kind of like the younger brother figure.
And the relationship between Chris and Vassos is a key one. He's almost like his wingman, isn't he? He kind of turns to him when he needs something or another line, or there's a lot of banter between the two of them, I guess.
Well, he is, but I mean, one thing I would really stress about the Chris Evans Breakfast Show is that all these people have really specific roles. So this is not a zoo format, you know? They come in and they do their job. So Lynn comes in, she reads the travel, and she might have a bit of banter around that. Vassos comes in to introduce the not-so-mystery guest, and there'll be a bit of banter around that. But they do have their specific roles.
And that's important to have a clear definition of what they do. So, for example, he reads the list on the top 10 as one of the features and things like that. Is that really important so people get to know the characters from that?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. They're not just there for the entire 3 hours. There is a reason why they enter into the studio in the first place.
Let's take a look at preparation and planning. We love this. This is a picture of your desk, of course, because it's not a picture of Helen's desk. Who does all the work then? Because this thing doesn't just happen, right? So tell us about the preparation of the show. How's it put together? How many people work on it? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, okay. So the show is 6:30 to 9:30, Monday to Friday. The team come down from the studio at about 9:45, and at about 9:46, they start the preparation for the next day's work. You know, okay. So yeah, there is a team. There's 1 producer, 3 assistant producers, and a broadcast assistant. And you know, this show, although it sounds completely spontaneous, is meticulously planned, because you know, Chris has a phrase, which I'm sure a lot of you know, which is to fail to prepare is to prepare to fail. It's a cliche, but cliches are cliches for a reason. And, you know, we have a roadmap which we follow. We have a show clock which we absolutely follow every day. And you can divert from that, and you should divert from that, because that's what makes the shows different and interesting, you know, and fun and engaging. But you need to have that roadmap, because if you haven't got that, then it's kind of chaos.
So the other day, for example, there was a roadmap for the show. It was great, but in the morning, someone suggested they should enter a half marathon, and by the end of the show, he'd signed off all the team to this half marathon, and it had gone off on a different direction. So having the ability to go off on a tangent is really, really important, right?
And yeah, it is really important. But also, what was so great about that was, you might think that sounds really indulgent, you know, like a member of the off-air production team happening to mention that they're taking part in this half marathon. But then Chris kind of going along, recruiting Lou, who was in for Lynn that week doing the travel, recruiting the other members of the team. That is kind of mirroring what would happen in offices around the country, you know, where someone says, I'm doing this marathon, and someone goes, do you know what? I might have a go at that, or someone's dead set against it, and it's then the sort of persuasion process. So the show kind of mirrors real life, and I think that's key to its success.
Where do all the ideas come from then? Do you have regular brainstorming sessions where you say, right, we'll come up with some ideas, or how does that process work? Because I know a lot of teams, they'll go away and do away days every quarter, or every couple of weeks they go to the pub, or actually most days they go to the pub. How does that work for you guys?
Sounds like my team. No, I think it varies really. For the kind of big set piece moments, you know, we absolutely will all sit down together, kind of think about the clock for that particular show. So summer is a particularly crazy time for us in terms of outside broadcasts and things that are generated and come from the show, but also because we are a big breakfast show and Chris is one of the BBC's biggest stars, the BBC want Chris and this show to kind of figurehead various kind of big BBC schemes, things like the Music Awards or, you know, whatever. So for those kind of big set pieces that are out of the ordinary, we absolutely will sit down as a team and talk about the kind of stuff that we would do. But for the day-to-day running of the show, that's a kind of ongoing conversation between the producer and Chris, and it will take place over text and email all the way right through that day and overnight, and then 5 a.m. when Paul sends Chris the famous 5 a.m. email.
Oh, tell us about the famous 5 a.m. email then. We like the sound of this one.
It's just a 5 a.m. email, you know, so you send it, you go, right, so this is what we've got on the show, we're going to do da-da-da-da-da.
So on his way in, he's able to kind of...
So absolutely, as he's having his cup of tea, because the team all arrive at 5 a.m., they start at 5.
Okay.
Chris rocks up at 6:29.
There you go, everyone. You need a 5 a.m. email, the email we all love. The show is kind of strung together with a series of different benchmarks in a way. And when I was kind of doing some analysis of it, and we've been talking about it for quite some time, it's interesting how these things glue the whole show together. So I thought we would show you the list of them, and maybe you can give us a sentence on each of them, and then we can work out what the common thread is. We're going to decode all of this stuff. So let's go through all of these. The Good Morning Chris Club. So what is that really? That's a hashtag as well.
Yeah, it's really straightforward. It is runs at 20 to 7 in the morning, so just after we've come on air, and it is an opportunity to make the show sound big and national, and it's people who are awake. Text the show or tweet the show and tell us why you should be in the Good Morning Chris Club. And, you know, Chris, I'm driving to work with a load full of milk in the back of my lorry. Can I have a honk? Yes, you can. Honk of a horn.
And it's almost like that community, isn't it, of early morning. All the way Thursday.
Again, really simple. It's just playing a really long song.
There we go, playing a really long song. How long is a really long song? Like 7 minutes?
Well, we can go up to 8.5 minutes if we're playing The Who, you know.
An 8.5, and this is out of the 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock?
Out of the 8 a.m. news. Yeah. You know?
Wow.
And the audience love it.
They do. Moira's Golden Oldies, then. Tell us about Moira's Golden Oldies.
So Moira Stewart, the newsreader, she gets to introduce a record from the 50s or 60s, which has been suggested by a listener and just has a very short, you know, I remember I used to put this on the old dance set and, you know, etc.
Gobsmackers?
Gobsmackers, 2 listener record choices that are segued together straight after the 9 a.m. news. So again, all this, as you can tell, is just about getting listeners' names and their locations on the air to make the show sound big and national and inclusive. Listener breaking news is a similar sort of thing as well? Yeah, just that's basically the Good Morning Chris Club, but just you know, an hour and a half later. Breaking news around your breakfast table. You can do no better thing on your breakfast show than get children on the radio. Children on the radio sound fantastic. Kids get a fanfare. Yeah, well, this is really because Chris is so good at talking to kids. A kid phones up, kids phone up and tell us what you're doing for the first time today. They phone up, they tell us, and then they return the following day and mark themselves out of 10, and they get a fanfare. Representing? Representing, you heard the start of it in the earlier clip. This is 3 listeners from across the UK tell us why today is special for them. They are representing the nation. A mystery guest is literally a mystery guest. Not anymore, actually. What? You've changed the mystery guest? Recent change, yeah. The mystery guest is now a not-so-mystery guest. Okay. So... 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s smashes. Does what it says on the tin, I presume? Yeah, it's out of the 8:30 news. Monday is 60s, Tuesday 70s, Wednesday, Thursday 80s, 90s. And that is, Chris will just say, you know, play the first record and say what year it was released in. And then play the second one straight off the back. And, you know, the listeners and Vassos have to guess whether it's higher or lower in year. But it's just an excuse to get music away. There's a lot of speech in our show, but we want to really kind of make a feature of the records that we do play. Yeah. And the top tenuous, which is probably my favourite. Yeah, top tenuous is a you know, I mean, this is a great Chris idea. You know, full credit to him. It's tenuous connections or loose connections to somebody famous. So if it was Thierry Henry, it wouldn't be, I once met Thierry Henry. It would be, I once met Thierry Henry's sister whilst she was in the supermarket and she dropped her basket and I helped pick up her broccoli. You know, it's kind of, it's magnifying the insignificant. And I think you know, kind of another thing that we really set out to do on this show, which is easy to do when you've got a star of the magnitude of Chris Evans, is he can make the big, he celebrates the minutiae, so he makes the big really small and the small really big in a really successful way.
That's a really interesting point. There's another feature on this program, and it's called Pause for Thought. And Pause for Thought's really interesting because this is a religious feature. You're hearing me right, a religious feature on an entertainment breakfast show. This is part of the BBC's commitment to making people think about spirituality and religion and things like this.
Public service broadcasting.
Public service broadcasting at its best. I want to play you a clip of it because when I tell people about this, they go, really? At like 9:20 in the morning, you're going to shove religion? This is a clip from the chap on the bottom left, Abdul Rahman Malik, who is a Muslim journalist. This is a bit of Pause for Thought on the Chris Evans Breakfast Show.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, today's Pause for Thought, please. Here we go.
This month marks an important anniversary in my life. 2 decades ago, I embarked on what has turned out to be a truly long-term relationship. It started a little patchy, it took time to grow, and when it finally started to take shape, it was messy and a little wild. At times, I wished I could let it all go, to replace it with the smooth, easy days that had preceded it. But I persevered, and now I can't imagine life without it. So it's with a fair degree of pride that I wish a happy 20th to my beard.
None of us saw that coming, did we?
Growing up, I was usually so far behind the fashion curve that I couldn't even keep up with the high street. But when it came to the beard, I was way ahead of the crowd, being one of a very few 19-year-olds sporting one. I associated the beard with rugged strength and earthy wisdom. I would have loved to channel the creativity of bearded men like Jeff Lynne, but I had other reasons for growing the beard, spiritual reasons. In my tradition, the beard is synonymous with being a man. It's a physical reminder of our duty to God to live an honorable, dare I say, chivalry.
I'll pause it there. He mentioned God on the breakfast show in a serious way. So that is public service broadcasting at its best. Pause for thought. I want to move on. I want to talk about guests. Guests on the program. So being one of the biggest morning shows, breakfast shows in Europe, you can get any guest on you want, right?
I wouldn't say any guest, but, you know, when Prince Harry's people call up and say Prince Harry would like to come on the show, the answer is usually yes.
Is there anyone who you haven't got on the show that you've wanted to get on?
I'm still holding out for George Clooney.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What, personally?
In many ways.
Yeah, aren't we all, darling? Aren't we all? So there's some interesting combinations of guests. So let me flash up some combinations. So this is Jeremy Clarkson and Richard Hammond from Top Gear with the chef Jamie Oliver. Yep. And then in the background you can see the script there. So we have Jamie Oliver talking about food, the Top Gear guys talking about
their
cars,
DVD.
their
Yep,
DVD,
yeah,
selling that kind of stuff. Interesting combo.
Yeah.
You get more interesting than that then. How about this? This is Billy Idol is the second appearance for Billy Idol at this conference, which is remarkable, really. He was on with Elvis yesterday, actually. So this is Billy Idol. Nice bit of plastic surgery there. And Catherine Jenkins is an opera singer.
Yep.
And then moving along, that is, Mick Fleetwood is above it, so from Fleetwood Mac, right? Then you've got an old, he is old. Variety entertainer from Britain. And then the guy on the right is a vicar, but he also used to be the #2 guy in the Communards. So you have rather interesting combinations, right?
And that's where the magic comes from.
Okay, so that's a deliberate strategy. Yeah,
it is. It is. It's that random mix, you know. And kind of going back to the previous slide, you know, for me, the actual star of that show, who unfortunately wasn't in that photo, was an actress called Jodie Whittaker, who in the UK has just starred in Broadchurch, which was this big kind of whodunit TV drama. But she came in, she actually ran rings around Clarkson and, you know, Jamie Oliver,
Billy
all
Idol.
of that. Yeah, I mean, you know.
Here's a show with everyone on. So it's like, all come in, we'll all be on the air, so that's kind of difficult to choreograph, perhaps. And then if you look really carefully at the back, oh, you see the biggest singer in the world right now. Just popped in the back there is a bit of Sam Smith, and then he gets to play afterwards as well, right? So live music on a Friday?
Live music every Friday, yeah. Live music, 4 songs.
Is it a way of that you get guests to feel really comfortable? Because when you listen to the guests on the show, they just feel relaxed and they're just taking it easy, and it's like you're joining them in the pub.
Yeah, and a lot of that is down to Chris and the way he kind of talks to people and kind of interacts with them on their level.
Okay, there was a famous guest on, which was this guy, Sir Elton John, and Sir Elton John was on the program. When's this? A couple of years ago now, yeah.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago, and Elton and Chris were having a great conversation, just the two of them, and I think Elton forgot he was on the radio because Chris made him feel so at ease and just like they're chatting together. I will play you a clip of it now, and let me just say that the worst thing that you can do on the BBC in the morning is say the word fuck, okay? It's really, really, really bad. Really bad, okay? So I just mentioned that before this clip. Here's Elton and Chris.
Like the CD.
In your room, right, apart from your personal stuff, which is the most important room for you? Is it your music room?
I don't really have a music room per se at the house. I don't play the piano very much, ever.
Really?
No.
Okay, Jules Holland says the first thing he's got to do when he gets up in the morning, he's got to go and play the piano to reconnect himself with it.
Oh, fucking hell.
No, we must apologise for that. Kiddie,
I was just exasperated with that. I mean, I can't think of anything worse than getting up and playing the piano. I mean, it's what I do. I do play over 100 shows a year, and I make records. Sorry about that. I was just, the remark was just so.
Sorry seems to be the hardest word, doesn't it?
It does. I'm very, very sorry for that awful word that I said, Jules Holland.
Yeah.
No, Jules. Why do you do that? It's like.
Well, because it's his thing. That's the way he works.
So, were you producing the show that day?
I was producing the show that day,
okay.
yeah.
So at BBC Producer School, they tell you to apologise really quickly, right?
Yeah.
And what did you do next?
So then, so we apologised several times, as you heard, both Chris and Elton. Then that was just coming up to the 9 AM news, and in the 9 AM news, I went in and I just said, I said to Chris, I just want you to apologise one more time. Just one more time, you know, kind of formally, and then it's done, and then we just move on. And Elton himself was a bit like, oh my God, because he knew this is going to be front page news in the UK, you know? Yeah. And it was front page news. Yeah. Elton John turns the air blue on BBC Radio 2. And I just said to Chris, look, I think you should, I said, look, just apologise once, play sorry seems to be the hardest word, and then we move on. And we did. And Elton himself apologised again. Oh, it was a real apology fest. It really was. Yeah. But, you know,
but it was still, you know,
got us out of it.
Radio can get on the front page of the British newspapers, and we like that. And that's a good thing when a radio story, even though he said what he shouldn't have said.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about music. You mentioned before, Chris mentioned it as well, you can do nothing better than play a great record on the radio, right?
So true.
How many songs an hour does the show get? So we contrasted with Elvis yesterday. I know Dennis is sitting over there. Elvis yesterday said he plays about 2 or 3 records an hour.
So that, absolutely, when I found that out, I was shocked.
You did. You had a little shudder at the thought of that. How many does the Chris Evans Breakfast Show play?
Okay, so I would say on average 8 or 9 an hour.
8 or 9 an hour, okay.
Yeah,
this is just for the record, this is a radio station with no commercials as well.
No commercials.
So just people should be aware of that as well. So 8 or 9 records an hour. And obviously you have stuff on the Radio 2 playlist that you play, so there's current records as well. But the music on Radio 2 is fairly eclectic, I think it would be fair in saying. Just remind us of the target audience of Radio 2. Who are you targeting?
35 plus.
35 plus, which is, you know,
pretty broad.
Fair enough. Okay. I thought, well, the best way to demonstrate it is to put together like a 90-second montage of songs taken from a particular week. So I've done that, and I edited it together with my fair hand. So here is a sample of the music that you can hear on the Chris Evans Breakfast Show on BBC Radio 2.
Good golly, Miss Molly, so like the ball. One way or another, I'm gonna find you. It's raining men. Hallelujah, it's raining men. I like to be in America. Okay, by me in America. Everything free in America.
For a smoke me in America.
Don't believe me, just watch. Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name. Hey Jude, don't make it bad.
Strangers in the night, exchanging glances.
Story of my life, I'll take her home. I think we're alone now. Doesn't seem to be anyone around.
Don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but me till I come marching home.
Ending there with Glenn Miller from 1942. Don't sit under the apple tree. I can see some research companies in the room twitching a little bit. This works, guys, okay? This works. You try and research that, it'll never work. But this works. Why does it work?
It works because it's real, you know? Like a lot of those songs, the kind of older songs, you know, they're picked by the listeners. We're a really responsive show, you know, we've got an amazing jukebox of like 18,000 tracks or whatever that we can draw on, and, you know, I genuinely believe that you can play any record on the radio as long as it's in context. You know, if you contextualize it right, and your presenter sells it right, there's no reason why you can't play anything.
The theme of the conference is Passion Meets Progress, and there's no doubt when Chris goes on the air and he wants to play a Glenn Miller record or a Frank Sinatra record, or the other morning he played AC/DC every 30 minutes. There was a different AC/DC song, right? Every 30 minutes. Fantastic. If you sell something enough and you give it enough passion, the audience go with it, right?
Well, my favourite was the day we played 6 Matt Monro tracks back to back.
6 Matt Monro records?
Yep.
Fantastic. There you go. Yeah. Interaction. Chris mentioned it's really important to get that theme of not necessarily lots of voices on the air, but the sense that lots of people are listening to the show, and you have lots of kind of ways of doing that, don't you? All those benchmarks really are kind of
absolutely. I mean, and increasingly, as you know, again, a theme of the conference, you know, social media has become increasingly important to us as a means of our audience getting in touch and responding and feeling like they're part of what we're up to.
Now, one of the biggest, what would you call this? I don't know what you'd call it. A thing on the radio station is this. This is 500 words. And this is the biggest piece of interaction that the show's seen for quite a long time. So explain to people who don't know what 500 words is.
Okay, so this is an example of what could be conceived as really, I guess, brave broadcasting for a music entertainment show. It is a short story writing competition.
Say that again slowly.
A short story writing competition.
A short story writing competition on a breakfast show.
For children aged 13 and under. And it's in its 5th year this year. When we launched it initially, we had no idea. We'd never run a competition for kids before on Radio 2. We didn't know how it was going to go. In our first year, we had 30,000 entries. In our second year, we had 74,000 entries. In our third year, 92,000 entries. Last year, 118,632 entries. And
this year?
And this year we closed at the end of February with 120,421.
Wow, okay, that is interaction. And all these kids had written a short story of 500 words or under.
Yep.
And this year it's grown and grown, and I've got a short video to play, 2 minutes, which was the launch of 500 words this year from Radio 2.
500 words is back. The Radio 2 Breakfast Show's short story writing competition for kids 13 and under returns for its most exciting year ever.
Breaking news in the past few minutes, the venue for BBC Radio 2's short story writing competition, 500 Words, has been announced. 500 Words fever is taking the nation by storm.
Thousands of children up and down the country have already started putting pen to paper.
Everyone throughout the country's caught the writing bug.
A host of A-list celebrities are signing up to celebrate this drive for child literacy.
Reaction to the news has sent a wave of excitement over social media.
This year, as it celebrates its 5-year anniversary, the competition is even bigger, and the final is going to be held in... I'm sorry, could you say that again? Is it really? That's amazing.
Wait, what? That's bonkers.
Goodness me, this is extraordinary. Paddington, have you seen this? We've got a very important royal engagement to attend.
Good evening. Another exciting incident-filled day as Chris Evans scores another shot on target and secures the ultimate venue for 500 words.
The standout event of 2015 will definitely be 500 words.
500 words.
500 words.
Absolutely, 500 words.
An amazing opportunity for young, aspiring writers.
I'm just getting my costume ready for the 500 words final.
And who are you supposed to be?
Peter Pan!
What do you get if you cross 2015, great stories and the British monarchy? Well, that's obvious. 500 words.
This is St James's Palace, where Her Royal Highness,
come in,
the Duchess of Cornwall has invited us to hold the 2015 500 words final. And it's amazing!
Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to witness is no illusion.
To find out how to enter and for some top writing tips, go to the Radio 2 website now.
Get reading, get writing,
get inspired.
And that is 500 words. I'd encourage you to go to the website and read more about it. It's a fantastic initiative. And again, a good example, I think, of great interaction and public service broadcasting at its best.
And brilliantly supported by our colleagues across the BBC, with everyone from Radio 1, you know, right through to Strictly Come Dancing, some of our biggest TV shows.
A couple of short ones. Social media important to the programme, and of course there's the infamous Facebook page, which we've all got to have, and then we have graphics that you flash up in the morning to encourage people to interact. One there, there's another one there, your final chance to represent the nation. So these are just nice little easy things for people to get involved in, I think.
Yeah, and also with the Facebook page in particular, because we have our own dedicated one, we can keep that conversation going throughout the day. It doesn't just finish at 9:30 when the show goes off the air.
Let's talk briefly about talent management. Can be kind of tricky dealing with talented people with big egos. Let me ask you a question. How do you tell someone who owns like a dozen classic Ferraris that their show could have been better today?
Well, I just think you have to be honest, you know? I mean, I think it definitely helps if you've got a presenter who constantly strives to be the best that he can be, and is in a position now where he really appreciates where he is and what he's got and the platform that he has on Radio 2. And I mean, he can spot you a mile off if you're faking it. If you're just like, yeah, it was great, you know.
Darling, it was wonderful.
Yeah, he can sense that a mile off. So I'm just always extremely honest with him, you know, and with all the presenters I've ever worked with, actually. And
sometimes talent can grow a bit kind of distant from the rest of the station. It's important to link them back into the station so the show is not an island, right?
Yeah, and you know, Chris, I would say at Radio 2, we are really lucky because we've got Chris Evans first thing in the morning and Steve Wright right in the heart of the afternoon. And they are two of the greatest salesmen on radio, kind of working in radio. And they celebrate Radio 2. And they celebrate all of Radio 2. I mean, Chris listens to a lot of Radio 2 just when he's at home, and then he'll come in, you know, on a Tuesday on a Wednesday morning and go, oh my God, Jamie Cullum played the greatest track on his jazz show yesterday. We have to replay it.
Yeah.
And then again, it's not fake. It's not like me sitting there and saying you must point to our specialist output. It's kind of, although I do a bit of that, you know, it's kind of genuine passion from him.
Let's talk a bit about the BBC. Chris is very important to the BBC. He's one of their biggest stars. He hosts a TV show on the Friday night as well. Does he get special treatment because he's a valuable talent? We talked, Ben talked before in the session about Radio 1 about talent being lured away with Zane Lowe going to Apple. I mean, you know, does the BBC look after their talent, right?
The BBC does look after their talent, absolutely. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And, you know, as Danny Cohen said, no one is bigger than the BBC.
Okay. You know? So, okay. So he could, if he cocked it up really badly, though, he'd be out of there, right? Which is why he appreciates the microphone, as he said before. Don't take this thing for granted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's in a good place.
Good. We like that. Okay, we've got a couple of minutes left. I just want to talk about generically what the best breakfast shows are, because there's lots of them in the room. So I thought I'd put a list. My list, a clear understanding of the audience. You've got to know who you're talking to, right? Interesting and engaging content goes without saying. The lovely Valerie Geller was quoted earlier. We'll quote her again because it's a good one. Don't be boring. And a natural feel-good atmosphere, which undoubtedly your show has. Anything to add to that list? What would you add in the best breakfast shows? What do they have?
Well, I think a sense of the day is hugely important.
So what makes today different than yesterday?
Absolutely. You need to be giving your listeners a nugget so that they feel that they know what's going on and kind of what the general conversation, what people are going to be talking about today. They've gotten in, they've heard about it, they're aware of it, they feel connected. And great music.
Great music.
Great music. Really, really important.
Great music, folks. I think it's about standing out from the crowd. There is no other show that I've heard of that plays that variety of music, or that has a short story writing competition, or that plays, you know, a record from the 1940s, you know, just because it can. Now, of course, you have to have the personality to lead it, but it's about standing out from the crowd. And hopefully today we've given you a flavor that a show doesn't have to be formulaic. It can do something different. It can do something very different if you have the right talent and you have the right support mechanism. Okay, we've got about 4 minutes to go. And this is that awkward, eggy moment where we flash up the questions slide and you get the opportunity to ask any questions. I can't really see, so if anyone's waving their hand, has any questions, you have one of the BBC's top radio people on the stage, and you can ask her a question right now. Is there one? Stick your hand up if you've got a question. This is where I should have planted some questions, really, because is there one down here? Great. Have we got a microphone as well? There's one over here. Do we have the microphone? Yeah. Okay, go, go, go. Was it down here? Stick your hand up. Yeah, okay. If you could say who you are, where you're from, and what your question is.
Hello, Toms Grevins, Latvian radio. Out of context, maybe the question, is Chris Moyles returning to BBC?
The other Chris.
Thank you.
I don't know about that. I don't know what...
You'll have to ask his agent.
Yeah, what Chris Moyles' current plans are. He was just recently on the Comic Relief Bake Off, the Great British Bake Off for Comic Relief, and he was very funny on it. He was really, really good. But I do not know what the plans are for Chris Moyles at the moment.
Personally, I would welcome him back on the radio soon. Any others? There's one down here as well, super duper.
You said Chris Evans likes to... I'm Sis from Norwegian radio.
Norwegian, okay.
Yeah, and I'm on air, so I'm curious about how much script does he have? You said he likes to prepare well.
Yeah.
But is it written down? Does somebody do it for him? How does he personalize it?
Well, he does... it's not scripted. It's not like a kind of, you know, meticulously typed out script. But what he does do, absolutely, is write bullet points for himself, just scribbled notes, with a Sharpie, usually on a bit of screwed up old newspaper or whatever. But if he kind of during a record has thinks this is what I want to say in the next link, he'll make a few points. And one of Chris's kind of mantras really is that everything you do on the radio has to have a beginning, middle, and an end. And don't just launch into something if you've got no idea how it's going to finish, because ultimately the only thing people will remember is how it's finished. So you can start with bells, whistles, and fanfares, but if it just sort of peters out, and then you play a record that fades in, that's no good for anyone. So kind of if you think there are certain key points that you want to get across, then I would certainly recommend making a little note.
Yeah. Any more? Or I think that's about it. Listen, it's been fantastic to chat about the program. It's a fantastic listen. You can listen online, of course. Please put your hands together and thank Helen Thomas for joining us.